The FBI showed up. They mocked her. The FBI showed up. They laughed when she said her mom was FBI a week later. No one's laughing. He mocked a black FBI agent Justice. Answered in 2 minutes flat. She stayed calm. He got cuffed. The world watched. An 8-year-old black girl stood up in class and said, "My mom is an FBI agent." The room burst into laughter. Not mocking. Dismissive. The kind of laughter that tells a child, know your place. But 7 days later, that laughter died. Because by the end of that week, her mother, Special Agent May Rice, was all over the news. Not for drawing a gun, not for making a scene, but for standing tall while another officer tried to break her down. She didn't shout, she didn't swing. She let the body cam speak. She let truth roll, slow, sharp, and unstoppable. And suddenly, everyone saw the girl in the back of the room. She was right all along. This story isn't about proving worth. It's about why so many still have to. So keep listening, because this isn't just about one mother and her daughter. It's about every time the world laughed too soon. At the back of room 3B at Martin Luther King Elementary sat a girl most kids didn't really notice. She wasn't loud, didn't joke around, didn't compete to raise her hand first. Her name was Rosa May Rice, 8 years old. Hair in 2 tight braids. Shoes are always clean. Voice soft, steady. She didn't speak often, but when she did, it was like she'd practiced each word with care. That morning, the sun poured through the classroom windows in long golden lines, making the linoleum floors shine like polished glass. Mr. Daniels, their teacher, had written a question on the whiteboard in green marker. What do your parents do? And are you proud of them? It wasn't a math test, not a spelling quiz, just a question about home. But in Rosa's chest, something tensed. Around her hands shot up like popcorn. My dad's a tow truck driver. My mom's a nurse. My parents sell stuff on TikTok. Laughter rolled through the room like wind through leaves. Rosa hesitated. Mr. Daniels scanned the class and gently nodded toward her. Rosa, would you like to share? She stood slowly, hands behind her back. My mom works for the government. She protects people. She's an FBI agent. Silence. Then someone snorted. Another kid muttered, "Yeah, right. Is she in the Avengers, too?" A wave of giggles. Rosa sat down without blinking, but her fingers reached for her pencil case, unzipped it, took out a silver pen, heavy, worn at the edges and engraved faintly with 3 letters, FBI. She placed it on the desk like it could speak louder than her voice ever could. But the moment passed. Kids moved on, and though Rosa kept her eyes forward, her fingers curled around that pen just a little tighter. At recess, someone bumped into her by accident. Later, in art class, a crayon rolled off her desk. "Oops," said a girl named Lila, not even trying to hide the smirk. Rosa picked up the crayon, didn't say a word. She wasn't hurt, but she was tired. And deep inside, something small started to crack. That night, at home, Rosa sat at the kitchen table as her mother came in mud on her boots, badge clipped to her belt, hair pulled tight. Without missing a beat, her mom washed her hands, opened the fridge, and began packing lunch for the next day. Rosa didn't speak right away. Her mom noticed. "Keo ngot kuame kochuyenji atruanga." Rosa's voice was barely there. They laughed. "When I said you were in the FBI, they didn't believe me." Her mom paused, took a deep breath, walked over, kneeled down. "You know what I do, Rosa?" Rosa nodded. "And you know what kind of person I try to be?" Another nod. Her mom reached into her pocket and pulled out a photo, creased, worn. It was a picture of her standing in floodwater, holding a little boy on her back, soaked, covered in mud. This was last year. I'd been awake 22 hours and just pulled this baby out of a house that was crumbling. I smelled like sewage. My boots were ruined, and my hands were bleeding from broken glass. You know what I did next? Rosa shook her head. I drove home, walked in, and the first thing I asked was, "Did you eat lunch today?" Rosa's eyes burned. "That's what I do. Not for a badge, not for applause. For you. For anyone who needs it. And one day, baby girl, they won't laugh. They'll listen." Rosa nodded slowly. Her mom smiled and kissed her forehead. And until that day, you keep writing the truth. You hear me? Rosa opened her pencil case, tucked the silver pen back inside. I hear you. The next day, something changed. During lunch, a boy named Jesse got pushed by another kid. Fell hard. Food everywhere. Everyone laughed. Rosa didn't take. She walked over, helped Jesse up, sat beside him as he picked rice out of his hoodie. You okay? She asked. He nodded, embarrassed. Then he whispered, they laugh at me too. Rosa looked at her silver pen, then back at him. You don't have to be loud to matter, she said. You just have to stay true. That afternoon, Mr. Daniels asked the class to share again only if they wanted to. This time, no pressure. One hand went up Jesse's. He said he was proud of his mom, who cleaned hotel rooms during the night so he could sleep safely. The class was quiet, thoughtful. Then another hand. Rosa. She stood again. No hands behind her. No trembling. My mom saves people, she said. Not with powers, with courage. She's an FBI agent. And no matter what you think, I'm proud of her. Because when she gets home muddy, tired, sore, she still asks if I'm okay before she takes off her shoes. This time nobody laughed. Nobody doubted. And when she took out the silver pen again just for a second, the boy in front leaned forward and whispered, that's cool. Rosa smiled. Small, but real. Because bravery wasn't about yelling. It was about standing steady even when the world didn't believe you yet. May Rice had been in the field for 17 years. She'd chased bank fraud across state lines, pulled child victims out of locked trailers in the dead of night, and sat across from war criminals wearing cologne like it covered their sins. She'd been spit on, underestimated, ignored, and called ma'am like it was an insult. But she had never been handcuffed in her own country while trying to do her job. It was supposed to be a simple follow-up. A neighborhood in rural Virginia had sent in an anonymous tip about a possible weapons stash in an abandoned shed. Local authorities hadn't prioritized it, so the Bureau stepped in. May offered to do it herself. In and out, she told her supervisor. Just eyes on. I'll verify and write it up. She drove in alone, in her Bureau-issued SUV. No sirens, no tea, just a badge in her jacket, a gun at her hip, and a case folder on the passenger seat. The road curled like a spine through farmland and half-boarded houses. She pulled up near a patch of woods, parked under a dying oak tree, and stepped out, scanning the lot. Her boots crunched dry leaves as she approached the shed, its door half-hinged, paint peeled down to gray skin. She was crouched, camera in hand, snapping photos of shell casings just inside the doorway, when she heard it gravel shifting behind her, fast. She turned and froze. 2 county deputies had their guns drawn. Hands up, one barked. She raised them slowly, careful not to move too fast. I'm federal, she said evenly. FBI, badge is in my inner coat pocket. They didn't ask for it. Step away from the structure, the older one shouted. Now, I'm a federal agent, May repeated, louder now, steadier. I have a right to be here. I'm conducting a legal investigation. The younger cop, barely out of academy age, moved in behind her. You match a suspect description. Step back or we will detain. I just told you who I am. You're trespassing, the older one snapped. This is private property. No, she said, fighting to stay calm. This is a federal lead. I'm here under authority. Call your supervisor. My credentials. The cuffs clicked before she could finish. Cold steel. Rough hands. Disbelief sliced through her chest, not fear, not anger, something worse. Humiliation. They shoved her against the hood of her own vehicle. A neighbor across the way started filming. Another leaned out their window, whispering. May saw it happen, the scene turning, the narrative bending. She was no longer an agent doing her job. She was a suspicious black woman near someone's property, and that was all it took. They searched her, pulled out her badge last. The older deputy held it like it was fake, squinting at it like he couldn't read. This could be stolen. May said nothing, not because she was afraid, because she was choosing restraint. She had a daughter at home, a girl who thought her mother was untouchable. who believed courage looked like a clean suit and sharp eyes. Rosa didn't know yet that sometimes courage meant surviving humiliation with your spine straight. May was shoved into the back of a cruiser. No Miranda rights, no questions, just silence and eyes that didn't see her as human. 22 minutes passed before a supervisor arrived. It was a woman, lieutenant rank, wide-set jaw, clipped voice. She took one look at May's ID, then at the deputies. "You detained a federal agent," she said flatly. She refused to identify, the younger one muttered. The lieutenant held up the badge. "This says otherwise." May finally spoke, her voice like sandpaper. "I identified myself 3 times." "You didn't announce clearly," the older deputy said, defensive. "You were acting erratic." "I was taking photos. I didn't even raise my voice." "Your tone was tired," May snapped. "I worked 17 hours straight and drove an hour to do your job. You saw a black woman crouched near a shed and decided that fit a narrative. You didn't stop to verify. You didn't even look at the badge until after you cuffed me." The silence after was heavy. The lieutenant didn't defend them. She didn't offer comfort, just said, "Remove the cuffs." They hesitated. She barked again. Now, when they were off, May didn't rub her wrists. She stood taller. "Are you armed?" the lieutenant asked. "Of course I am," May said. "I'm an agent." The lieutenant exhaled. "You want to file internal?" May shook her head. "The Bureau will handle it. But I want your body cam footage secured. Every second. It's already uploading." "Good," May said. "Because the next time someone tells you who they are, believe them before you make them prove it." She turned and walked to her vehicle. Her camera was still on the ground, half buried in leaves. She picked it up, checked it still functional. The neighborhood was quiet now. The phones had stopped filming. The bystanders had closed their blinds. But something had been recorded, and it would echo. When she got home, Rosa was waiting at the kitchen table, drawing superheroes in her notebook. She looked up, smiled, then paused. "Your hands," she said, pointing. May looked down. "Red marks." She sat down beside her daughter, took a breath, and said, "I had a rough day." "Did you catch a bad guy?" "No," May said. "I caught something worse." Rosa tilted her head. "I caught someone forgetting that people like me wear this badge too." Rosa reached into her backpack, pulled out the silver pen, and placed it in May's hand. "You said this writes truth," she whispered. May's throat tightened. She held the pen like a lifeline. "It does." And that night, she wrote it all down, every detail, every violation, every second of silence that screamed louder than words. Because justice doesn't begin with revenge. It begins with record. And real power, it never needs to raise its voice. Lieutenant Voss stood motionless for a beat. The body cam footage had just finished playing. Her jaw was set, her arms folded across her chest like they were holding in the storm building behind her eyes. "You detained a federal agent," she said, voice low but sharp. Officer Larkin, mid-40 seconds, chest puffed, posture stiff, shifted uneasily. She didn't identify herself clearly. "I believed she was trespassing." "Stop," Voss cut him off. "We're not playing that game today." "You ignored credentials, escalated without cause, and cuffed a federal officer who was acting within her jurisdiction." He opened his mouth again, but she raised a single hand. "You didn't follow protocol. You didn't ask questions. You didn't even pause to verify. Why?" He glanced at May, still standing to the side, arms crossed, face unreadable, and said, "Her tone." She was being evasive. "Her tone." Voss echoed like the words tasted rotten. "What protocol book lists tone as probable cause for detainment?" Silence. "Sergeant Vega," she called. "Take Officer Larkin into custody. Unlawful detainment, failure to verify identification, excessive use of force." Larkin's face turned crimson. "You're serious? You think that badge makes you untouchable?" Voss stepped closer. "It doesn't. And if you ever forget that again, you won't just lose your badge, you'll answer to federal charges." Vega stepped forward. Larkin stumbled back. "This is insane. This," Voss snapped, "is accountability." May didn't move. She didn't gloat, didn't smile. She just exhaled slowly, feeling the steel pressure around her ribs begin to release. Boss turned to her. Do you want to press formal charges? May looked her in the eye. No, not for him. I want the report filed, footage backed up, and your internal procedures reviewed. Not just him fix the culture that let this happen. You're sure? Boss asked. May nodded. I'm not here for payback. I'm here for change. Voss gave a short nod of respect. You've got it. Full transparency. And I'll make sure this reaches the right ears. May finally spoke with a trace of weariness. It's not the cuffs that hurt, Lieutenant. It's the assumption. Then let's change what people assume, Voss said, starting with this. And in that moment, two women, one in uniform, one in cuffs, not an hour ago, stood on common ground, not as enemies, as enforcers of what the law should be. And somewhere deep inside, something shifted, not just justice, but hope. It was the kind of Monday that felt like something had changed in the air. Not the weather, though. The sky was bluer than usual, the clouds high and slow moving, but something else. A shift, like the ground beneath. Room 3B at Martin Luther King Elementary was no longer quite the same. The kids came in louder than usual. A ripple of chatter hummed through the room like electricity. Not about math, not about recess, but about something they'd seen on their parents' phones, on the news, on TikTok. Hey, did you see it? She was on the news like real news. I thought Rosa was just making that up. Mr. Daniels had barely put his coffee down before the whispers grew into voices. Then one brave soul blurted, Is it true? Rosa's mom's like, actually FBI? All eyes turned. Rosa May Rice sat in her usual seat by the window, her braids freshly redone over the weekend, her face calm, her backpack zipped up. The silver pen her mother had given her rested neatly beside her math workbook. She didn't nod, didn't say yes. She just looked at Mr. Daniels. He met her eyes with a small, almost apologetic smile. He had seen the video too, everyone had. The headline had made its rounds. Local FBI agent detained without cause turns tables on local cop. The thumbnail showed a grainy still of May Rice, standing tall, hands cupped, chin high, unshaken. Another clip captured her, calmly demanding protocol be followed, her voice like a steel cord under tension. And in the background, though only visible for a second, Rosa's silver pen sat on the car dashboard, catching a sliver of sunlight. Mr. Daniels took a breath, closed the attendance book, and said, Before we begin today, I think we need to talk. Not about spelling, not about geography, but about truth. The class leaned in. He looked around the room, then nodded toward a boy near the back. Jaden, you had your hand up. Jaden wasn't the kind of kid who usually spoke first, or at all. Tall for his age, with a hoodie always a little too big and shoelaces always a little too loose. The kind of kid who'd been picked on a bit, kept his head down a lot. But today, his voice didn't wobble. I saw the video, he said. Rosa's mom didn't yell. She didn't fight. She just stood there and told the truth. And then they believed her. He looked down, then added, That was brave. Rosa blinked. Jaden turned slightly in his seat. I used to get picked on too. People made fun of how I talked, said my voice was too soft, like it meant I wasn't strong. He glanced at Rosa. But your mom didn't yell. She just stayed calm. And she won. There was a pause. The kind of pause that made a room feel full, not empty. Then Mr. Daniels asked gently, Rosa, do you want to say something? Rosa stood slowly, not hesitant, just intentional. She picked up the silver pen, held it between her fingers. Then she said, My mom always tells me, truth doesn't need applause. It doesn't need permission. And it doesn't stop being true just because people laugh. She paused. They laughed last week. When I said she was FBI, her voice didn't rise. It didn't break. But truth doesn't disappear when people don't believe it. It just waits. Jaden nodded slowly. Rosa turned the pen over in her hand. She gave me this on my birthday. Told me it doesn't write spells. It writes facts. And that's enough. A girl near the front raised her hand timidly. Did it hurt her, getting arrested like that? Rosa thought for a moment. It hurt more, she said quietly, that they didn't even ask who she was. They just decided. Another pause. But she didn't scream. She didn't fight. She waited until someone honest showed up. Jaden whispered, "That lady, Lieutenant Voss. She changed everything." "Yeah," Rosa nodded. "But my mom didn't wait for someone else to rescue her. She stayed strong, so when help came, it could see the truth." Mr. Daniels let the silence linger. Then he walked over to Rosa's desk. "You know," he said softly, "I've been a teacher for 22 years. I've seen a lot of kids say a lot of things. But today, Rosa, you reminded me that bravery isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet, steady, like a heartbeat." He glanced around the room. "Like truth." Rosa sat back down, her pen resting gently between her fingers. But something had shifted. This time, no one laughed. This time, they looked at her not with doubt, but with something closer to reverence. Respect. A boy leaned across the aisle and whispered, "That pen's cooler than any Pokemon card." Rosa gave a tiny smile. The kind of smile you only give when someone finally sees what you knew all along. Jaden raised his hand again. "Can I say one more thing?" Mr. Daniels gestured. "Go ahead." Jaden turned to Rosa. "Your mom, she didn't just stand up for herself. She stood up for people like us, too." The class murmured in agreement. And for the first time in room 3B, Rosa wasn't the quiet girl in the corner. She was the girl with the silver pen. The girl who told the truth even when it cost her. The girl who watched the world carefully and, when the moment came, showed it something better. Mr. Daniels picked up a marker and wrote 4 words on the board. "Truth doesn't need proof." Then, underneath it, "But sometimes it needs a pen." And that day, the lesson had nothing to do with commas or capitals. It had everything to do with character. And Rosa May Rice, she had plenty. She had plenty. Plenty of courage. Plenty of strength. And now, finally, plenty of people watching. Not to doubt her, but to learn from her. The following week, something extraordinary happened. May Rice's face, tired, fierce, unapologetically real, was everywhere. The video had gone viral. Every second of the unjust arrest, every line she delivered with poise, every clip of Lieutenant Voss spinning the handcuffs onto the man who put them on her. TikTok turned her into a trending tag. News outlets called her the calm storm. People were not just watching, they were cheering. And so, when career day came around again at Martin Luther King Elementary, Rosa wasn't just the girl with the pen anymore. She was the girl whose mom changed the rules. Mr. Daniels smiled as May entered. This time, no introduction was needed. A kid near the window whispered, "She's the one. That's her." Even Jaden, who once barely made eye contact with teachers, sat tall, eyes wide. He whispered to Rosa, "Your mom's a legend." Rosa didn't smile big. Just that same quiet, steady smirk she'd inherited from May. May stepped to the front. "I'm Agent May Rice," she said. "But titles don't matter much today. I'm here as something bigger, a mother." She paused, scanning the class. "And mothers," she said, "we don't need to fly, or punch through walls, or shoot lasers from our eyes. We just need to teach our children one thing, that truth, no matter how quietly spoken, is stronger than any lie shouted." Then she looked at Rosa, eyes fierce with pride. "I didn't go through that moment for sympathy. I went through it because the world still needs to learn justice doesn't wear just one face." She held up the silver pen. "My daughter carries this now. Not because it's fancy, not because it's magical, but because it reminds her truth doesn't flinch, it doesn't beg, and it sure as hell doesn't back down." The class erupted in claps, not polite ones, not the kind you give after a boring guest speaker, but real, stomping, table-thumping applause. Mr. Daniels wiped his eyes discreetly. Rosa stood up beside her mother, lifted her chin, and said one last line, not loudly, but with all the weight of a mountain behind it. "My mom told me something. Not everyone in uniform is right, and not everyone who gets laughed at is wrong. The truth doesn't need to shout. But today, it sure gets the mic." The classroom howled. Jaden stood and clapped so hard his desk shook. For the first time, Rosa smiled wide. And somewhere out there, behind every camera, every headline, and every child who once thought silence was safer than honesty, someone stood up a little straighter because they just saw what real power looks like. And it doesn't wear a cape. It wears calm. It wears scars. It wears silver pens passed from hand to hand, and voices raised not in anger, but in legacy. Not every badge brings justice. Not every silence is peace. And not every laugh means someone was wrong. In this story, Rosa didn't shout. May didn't fight back with fists. Yet somehow, their quiet strength shook a system that thought it was untouchable. This isn't just a tale about race or power, it's about dignity. About what it means to raise a child who knows her worth, even when the world tries to laugh it down. A silver pen, a steady voice, a truth that didn't need proving, only living. So ask yourself, when your moment comes, will you whisper or will you stand? If this story stirred something in you, don't let it stop here. Drop a comment, tell us what you took away, share this video, and subscribe for more stories that speak not just to your head, but to your heart. Thanks for listening. Stay brave, stay human. We'll see you in the next chapter.